listener production.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
Hello, welcome to this special US election episode of The Briefing. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt and Chris Spyrou is here with me. It is Thursday, November 7.
Morning, Sash. Morning, everybody. A line I didn't think I was going to be saying this morning. Donald Trump is the 47th president of the United States. Overnight, as we were sleeping, the Republican nominee secured enough electoral college votes to claim victory over Democratic nominee Kamala Harris. Right now, he has 292 to her 224 electoral votes. In a result that has shocked some political watchers and enthusiasts, Trump managed to turn 4 key swing states red: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia. That's been enough to win, even with Nevada and Arizona races still undeclared. We've also seen 90% of counties swing back to the Republicans in 2024, while the Democrats failed to turn a single swing state, Sash.
Yeah, and this is obviously all at the time of recording this morning. And I guess the question is, how did he do it? Trump and the Republicans managed to increase their share of the vote with young men, blacks, Latinos, and even women, although Harris did have a 10-point advantage over her opponent when it came to female voters. The 78-year-old managed to cut through with voters on the issues of immigration and inflation, while his opponent's attempt to make reproductive and women's rights a deciding factor for voters just doesn't appear to have worked. Trump managed to cut through with the group the Democrats had been targeting, and that's middle Americans who at the end of the day want a cheaper trip to the grocery store, and he really managed to tap into that desire to shrink the circle of concern back to what they can and can't afford to be putting on the dinner table. He spoke just before 2:30 in the morning, Florida time, to deliver his victory speech. It was apparently unscripted, and his first port of call was to praise his movement, which he described as the greatest political movement of all time. Here's what he had to say after that.
We're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that.
He was joined on stage by his family as well as his VP, J.D. Vance, who had this to say.
Under President Trump's leadership, we're never going to stop fighting for you, for your dreams, for the future of your children. And after the greatest political comeback in American history, we're going to lead the greatest economic comeback in American history under Donald Trump's leadership.
Donald Trump's decisive victory is a bitter blow for Democrats, who will now have to go away and pinpoint where they went wrong. Kamala Harris, at the time of recording, is yet to concede, but is expected to call her opponent very shortly. Harris hosted a watch party at Howard University in Washington, D.C., but never showed, with her campaign advisor confirming in the early hours that she wouldn't be speaking on election night. We know she'll speak to the American people from the uni at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so that's about 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time.
Yeah, I think there's a fair bit of disbelief at this result. I am among those feeling a little bit blindsided, and it's not that I didn't think it was possible that Trump won, but I think the reason that there's this feeling of being blindsided is that the polls had predicted this super tight race, but Trump has won it comfortably. He hasn't broken a sweat. He's predicted to get up to 315 electoral college votes, which is insane. Now, some Democrats are blaming Joe Biden for the loss. Sources have told CNN his decision to try to remain in the race robbed the party of hosting a robust primary contest to decide the nominee. Instead, with just 107 days to run the race, Kamala Harris had to play catch-up to try and win over voters who had become disillusioned by inflation and global conflicts that had been felt under the Biden administration.
Yeah, and Harris had failed to distance herself from Biden's policies and presidencies. I know a big part of her campaign was talking about turning the page. And what a lot of critics are saying now is that, well, you're a part of that page that you want to turn. So this was something that was pointed out by the Trump campaign, and I think it's really, really captured in this moment on The View a few weeks ago.
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
And despite countless celebrity endorsements, clever social media campaigns, and a dominant display at the only debate between the pair, Harris just couldn't get it over the line.
Yeah, the loss echoes what we saw in 2016 when Hillary Clinton spectacularly lost to Trump, with some questioning once again, Is America ready for a female president? And it's not as simple as that, as we've just spoken about with a couple of the key issues that Harris faced on this campaign. But sadly, it's a really likely factor.
Let's now get into the reactions. How is the world reacting to Donald Trump's decisive election victory? Well, let's start at home. Both Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton have sent their congratulations to the new president. The PM tweeting, "Australians and Americans are great friends and true allies. Working together, we can ensure the partnership between our nations and people remain strong into the future." The opposition leader meantime told his followers the United States has been an overwhelming force for good in the world. When our close ally is strong and at its best, the world is at its best, which... I happen to agree with this as well there, Sash. There are questions about how Trump's win will impact us here down under, especially the AUKUS Pact. Some are confident nothing will change, but there are questions about whether the returning president will proceed with the policy. I guess time will tell.
Yeah, other world leaders have sent their congratulations, including Viktor Orban from Hungary, Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu, and the UK's PM Keir Starmer. One reaction that has been closely scrutinised is that of Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, and this is because his country is relying so much on US funding to fight Russia's invasion. The US is also the biggest donor to NATO. Now, in a tweet, Zelensky has put on a brave face, saying, "I appreciate President Trump's commitment to the peace through strength approach in global affairs. This is exactly the principle that can practically bring peace in Ukraine closer. I am hopeful that we will put it into action together."
Yeah, and moving now to some of the more lighter and fluffier ones. We know celebrity endorsements formed a huge part of the 2024 election campaign, even though their impact has been questionable, and they're reacting as well to this, Sash. Like, there were people that came out to bat for both sides really hard. So now, some people are eating their words or, sending their commiserations. Cardi B, she's come out. She was part of one of Kamala's rallies the other day, and she shared an Instagram video of herself watching the results with the caption, "I hate y'all bad." And
Sure.
Happen to agree with that as well. Oscar winner Jamie Lee Curtis wrote that it would be a return to a more restrictive, some fear draconian time. Christina Applegate said, quote, "My child is sobbing because her rights as a woman may be taken away." While on The View, Whoopi Goldberg has been outspoken about her feelings on Trump, saying this.
"He's now the president. I'm still not going to say his name. That's not going to change."
And ever the writer, author Stephen King summed up his feelings with this incredible quote. He tweeted, "There's a sign you can see in many shops that sell beautiful but fragile items. Lovely to look at, delightful to hold, but once you break it, then it's sold. You can say the same about democracy."
Damn.
End quote. Look, in terms of support for Trump, his biggest endorsement, of course, came from billionaire Elon Musk. He donated $184 million to pro-Donald Trump spending groups in the span of 3 months. And he became one of the most important Republican Party donors for this campaign. And as it became clear his man would be returning to the White House, the Tesla boss posted a meme of himself carrying a kitchen sink into the White House with the caption, "Let that sink in."
Oh, God, okay, yeah.
Good one, Elon.
Yeah. And of course, Jeff Bezos is among those who are celebrating the win. Piers Morgan as well has called it the greatest comeback in political history, echoing there the comments by JD Vance. And a lot of young men have come online and they're celebrating this as a win for common sense. That's the thing I've been seeing on my socials. A victory for truth, taking back power, which makes me feel very uncomfortable and makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable. And I guess this is why a lot of young people were backing the Democrats. Looking ahead now, what can we expect when it comes to the major platforms Donald Trump campaigned on? So first, let's talk about immigration. That, something that I found really interesting was, like we said, his victory speech wasn't scripted, and the first policy position he wanted to discuss was immigration. In 2016, he rode the wave of building a wall between the US and Mexico, and now he's promised mass deportations.
November 5th, 2024 will be Liberation Day in America. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. I will rescue every city and town that has been invaded and conquered, and we will put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail or kick them the hell out of our country and fast.
It is important to note, under Biden, there were record levels of people arriving at the border, with polls showing Americans want stricter control there, and they generally do support the notion of deportation. However, Trump plans to take it a step further, seeking an end to automatic citizenships for children born to immigrants and revoking existing legal statuses that currently protect immigrants who had come from countries like Haiti and Venezuela, Sash. JD Vance, his VP, estimates 1 million people could be removed per year.
Yeah, and let's look at inflation now, which is another huge campaign policy from Trump and the Republicans. And he has been strong on criticising inflationary pressures and the cost of living under the Biden administration. He's promised to cut taxes for businesses and hike tariffs on imported goods, while his mass deportation policy and cracking down on the Federal Reserve, which is America's central bank, is expected to have the opposite effect on inflation. An economics professor says those policies will, quote, likely lead to a substantial decrease in US economic output and a large increase in inflation. So that's going to be a really interesting one to watch and to see whether his policies that he's promising are going to fix inflation are actually going to have the opposite effect.
Yeah, and look, changing pace, the next massive issue was reproductive rights. He has said a federal abortion ban is unnecessary and that this issue should be resolved at the state level. It is unlikely we will see him using executive powers to restrict abortion rights at a federal level. He has made his position on the issue clear in the lead up to the election, where he said he supports 3 exceptions to abortions, being incest, rape, and where the mother's life is at risk. Importantly, this was an issue on 10 state ballots yesterday, Sash. So abortion rights passed in 7 of them. Among them was Arizona and Missouri, which undid existing restrictions, but it did fail in Florida, Nebraska, and South Dakota. Voters in Maryland, Montana, Nevada, New York, and in Colorado passed measures to formally enshrine existing rights and prevent lawmakers from undoing them.
Yeah, so we'll see whether that becomes a factor if he does kind of make these federal promises about abortion. But as you said, it looks like he really does want it to be a state-based issue. Turning now to global conflicts.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. And it will take me no longer than 1 day.
Experts have warned that he's likely to adopt this blank check approach to Israel, essentially giving the country whatever it wants. He's commented before that he'd let Israel, quote, finish the job in both Gaza and Lebanon. And no one's really sure what that means, which I think is standard a lot of the time with the things Trump comes out and says. But it is worth noting in the final days of campaigning, he did promise US voters that he will swiftly bring peace in the Middle East. So, I mean, maybe people are hopeful that he will actually change something.
Yeah, and one of those people that are hopeful is my grandfather. I was watching this at his home yesterday.
Yeah.
And he only consumes news through the Greek channels, but he was pretty clear on Donald Trump's policy positions on the Middle East. And he said, well, now it's time that he puts his, money where his mouth is and brings an end to these terrible, terrible conflicts.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. He says he's going to end everything on day one. So let's see if he actually does succeed in that. Look, turning now to climate change, Donald Trump plans to expand oil and gas drilling and roll back all of Biden's climate policies. Scientists say his approach could significantly increase US greenhouse gas emissions and reduce federal climate research. Look, he's vowed once again to remove the US from the landmark Paris Climate Agreement, in which members have committed to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. So I think when you look at the US and how much of a polluter it is, this is really concerning for people who are worried about climate change.
We will drill, baby, drill.
So, when can we expect to see Donald Trump take to the White House, and what happens over the next few days? Well, Joe Biden will continue to sit in the Oval Office until January 20, when the 47th president will be officially sworn in on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, so still a little while to wait for that. In the coming days, though, the count will continue, but nothing can change the result now. Donald Trump has secured that 270 electoral college votes to win. Kamala Harris will concede, and as we mentioned, the Democrats are going to go away, and they'll have to consider this result and what it means for the party and what they do next. Harris's next move is yet to be revealed. There's plenty still left to play out in US politics over the coming days, weeks, months, and 4 years, Chris.
Yeah, buckle up. That's it for this morning's episode. Thank you for being here and for joining us for all our US election coverage. It's not over yet, though, with plenty more analysis on the way.
Yeah, later today we'll bring you a conversation with former PM Malcolm Turnbull about what Trump's win means for democracy, which is another big question that has come up in this election campaign. I'm sure people are thinking about it and worried about it, so that'll be a really interesting chat. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt.
I'm Chris Spyrou.
Thanks for listening.
Listener.